Hi, I'm Scott. Welcome to Synth Stuff. I've been away for a couple of weeks. I'll tell you more about that in the near future and where I was and what I was doing. In the meantime, today we're going to be talking about mod matrices. What they are, why you use them, don't be afraid of them, and then we're going to demonstrate the mod matrices on 3 different synthesizers and how they differ, how you would use them, and why. Coming up next. I've had quite a few people ask me to do this one because they don't understand mod matrices and they're afraid of them. They don't understand why you'd use them or what they're even for, so we're going to cover that today. So what is a mod matrix? Mod is short for modulation, and you want your synthesizer to modulate, otherwise you have sounds like this. Pretty boring. So you want modulation, you want to modulate the filter, you want to modulate the pitch, you want to modulate the amplitude. There's a lot of different things that you can modulate, and there's different ways that you can modulate them to give you a different sound. Now, in the old days of modular synthesizers, the way this is done is with patch cables. So you would take a patch cable from, let's say, the LFO. So you have an LFO that's generating a low frequency signal. It's oscillating at a low frequency, say 4 or 5 times a second. You then take a cable, plug one end to the LFO output, and then plug the input of that cable into whatever you want to modulate, say the pitch of an oscillator. Now as that LFO goes up and down, it's going to modulate the pitch up and down, and you'll end up with something that sounds like this. As the LFO goes up and down, you hear the pitch go up and down. So that's what modulation is. In the old days, that's how it was done, with patch cables, and you ended up with synthesizers that looked like this. Now, I'm not a modular guy. That's a video that I'm actually going to do in the future. Now, if you are into modular, it gives you an incredibly flexible way of modulating your synthesizer, because basically you can modulate anything from anything. If you want to take the output of this montage and use that to modulate the frequency of the LFO of this Summit, well, you could do that. Well, if the Summit had an input that allowed you to do that. If I had a true modular synthesizer, I could take the output of the montage, just the audio output, run it into a modular synthesizer and have it modulate a filter or whatever. And it would do that, and you would get interesting sounds because of that. That's why people who get into modular end up with huge modular synthesizers, because the possibilities become endless. Anything can modulate and change anything else. Now let's talk about the mod matrix. When it comes to the world of digital synthesizers, you can't have wires going every which way. Well, there's nowhere to plug them in the first place. And secondly, when you do plug those wires in, you're sending analog voltages from places, and that's how it's actually controlling things, is by sending and changing analog voltages. Digital synthesizers don't have that. What they do have is a digital representation of those wires inside, running in software. It's not quite as flexible because you can't connect anything to anything, but you can connect anything to anything that the programmers have decided that you can do. And on some synthesizers like the Hydrasynth, you can almost connect anything to anything because the mod matrix is so vast. The 3 synthesizers we're going to look at today are the Novation Summit, the Hydrasynth, and the Microfreak. All 3 of them have a mod matrix. All 3 of them work a little bit differently. So we're going to see how we work with those, what they can do, and what the differences are. Let's start by looking at the Microfreak. On the Microfreak, the mod matrix is located in the top left corner. So on the Microfreak, we have sources on the left and destinations on the top. What that means here, we have cycle envelope, LFO, pressure, which is key pressure, and key ARP. This is the source of our modulation, and then we can assign it to any one or more of these destinations on the top: pitch, wave, timbre, cutoff for filter. And then we have these 3 assigned ones where we can just assign whatever it is that we want to it. So if we look at the display, we can say we're going to assign this to currently it's envelope cutoff, and we can change that destination if we want. The way we actually change that is by just turning this knob, and you can see we're moving our cursor through the mod matrix. If we're on one that's already set, if we push and hold it, it's going to clear it. So now that entry is gone. So let's say we did want the LFO to control a pitch. We'll just move our cursor to LFO pitch, press the knob, we can see the amount there. So then we're just going to turn the knob and change how much pitch we want the LFO to affect it. If we put it up high, we get ridiculous sounds. Or if we put it down low, it's less. We could say we also want the LFO to control the waveform. So let's add that in. And you can see the wave here. We're just going to crank that up as well. So now we're going to have crazy sound as it's modifying the waveform. Okay, so let's say we also want the pressure to modify the cutoff. So that's already set there, but we're going to reset it. So we can say the pressure cutoff is 0. So we're going to crank that up. So now that we have pressure assigned to cutoff, if I press it lightly, it doesn't cut off much, but if I press it hard, you hear the filter opens up. So we have this matrix of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 by 5. So that's 35 mod matrix possible entries. We do have 3 that we can assign. Other than that, these are hard-coded. We can't change them. We can just turn them on and off and adjust how much they're actually affecting it. Next, we're going to look at the Novation Summit. The Novation Summit edits its mod matrix in the screen right here. So we'll start with an init patch, very simple patch, and we were going to go into the mod matrix by pressing mod. Now this has different slots, whereas the Microfreak had those 35 different slots. Here we have universally open slots, and if we look, we see we actually have 16 of them available to us here to be able to use. So what we are seeing is we have direct destination. So let's go to the first one here. We're going to modify the aftertouch. So this is our source. We're going to say aftertouch. When we have direct manipulation of aftertouch, so the destination is pitch. So for oscillators 1, 2, and 3, it's going to alter the pitch. And how much is it going to alter? Well, if we had it at 0, it's going to do nothing. If I push down the aftertouch, nothing happens. But if I crank that way up, now if I press into aftertouch, it goes so high you can't hear it. So that's clearly too much. There we go. So now you can see that the aftertouch is altering the pitch of the oscillators this much. Now we do have a secondary item here, direct, which we can change to, oh, I don't know, let's say velocity. So now it's going to decide the aftertouch and the velocity together. We're going to determine how much pitch is going to change. So if I press this lightly into aftertouch, we only get a little bit. But if I strike the key quickly and push aftertouch, now we get more modulations. So actually, I believe it's multiplying, or I don't think it's adding. I think it's multiplying the 2 items together to get the total depth. So that means that instead of using 2 separate mod slots, one for aftertouch or one for velocity, we can just combine the 2. Because if we go into slot 2, we could say we also want LFO. Let's say LFO 1, direct, destination, same pitch and depth. So now we've got 2 separate things. On page 1, we have the aftertouch of velocity. Page 2, LFO, all altering the pitch. And you can hear how LFO is modifying the pitch. And if I push into aftertouch, it also modifies the pitch and brings it up. Now you can see LFO 1 plus, which means it's only going to raise it. If we change that to LFO plus and minus, that means it's going to actually raise and lower it. It's bidirectional. You can hear that it's going down lower now. We could go into another slot and say we are going to use the, let's see, mod amp envelope. We have different, we got animate buttons over here. We have our animate button 1, and our destination is going to be, let's see, filter, filter drive, filter distortion. Yeah, let's do filter distortion. So we have to crank that up. Now that I've set up this item in Animate 1, our Animate 1 button has lit up because the synthesizer knows there's now something connected to this button. So if I play a note and then press the Animate button, you you can hear the filter distortion kicks in. So if I actually bring some filtering into there, now we hit the animate button. You can hear that. So let's actually add one more on the animate 2 button. And that one we're going to put on filter drive, and we'll crank that up as well. So now you can see we have animate 1 and 2. So let's hear that. You could push both. So there we have just switching on and off, but we could assign that to the mod wheel or pretty much anything else that we wanted to. It doesn't have to be just on or off. We can connect pretty much anything to anything else, and as you can see, there's all kinds of different things in here that we could put in here. Noise. It has a white noise generator, which is basically a random noise generator, and if we put a destination of, oh, I don't know, actually if we put that into oscillator pitch, it's going to go nuts. We basically get white noise. All right, here's the big one. Here's the Hydrasynth. The Hydrasynth has an incredible mod matrix. Let's init this. It has 32 mod matrix slots, which makes this a modulation beast. The amount of modulation that you can do in this thing is just beyond comprehension. And you can get these macro controls into it so they can adjust your modulation. The modulation can adjust the macros. The modulation can modulate itself. You can actually have the modulation modulate the modulation, believe it or not. This thing is incredibly flexible. So here's our basic init sound. Let's go into the mod matrix. On the Hydrasynth, we have quite a few pages. You can see we have 11 pages in here. So now that I have the page showing over here, you can see we can actually page up to 11, so up to 31 and 32 different mod matrix slots. So let's assign the first one. We can just hit this button here, and now we can decide where this is going to come from. The source for one is, let's say, LFO1, and then we move down to the next one, and now we get the destination. Oscillator, let's say all oscillators, right there. We're going to modulate the pitch, and here's the depth that we're going to modulate. So now if I just press a key, LFO1 modulates the pitch. And we could change that to any LFO. Let's change that to LFO5. And now that we'll exit out of there, and if I go into LFO5, we can change the rate. Okay, back to the mod matrix. So now you can see LFO5 is modulating the pitch of all the oscillators. So let's go and create another modulation. This time, instead of doing it manually like we saw here, the Hydrasynth has a shortcut. And what you want to do is, let's say I want to modulate the filter from LFO4. So if we listen to the filter, let's set that up. Some resonance in there. All right, so now we've got the filter the way we want it. We want to modulate that from LFO4. So I'm going to press LFO4 and hold it down. That's the source. The destination is filter 1. We automatically pop into the mod matrix over here, and it's already set that up for us. LFO4 is connected to filter 1. Cutoff, we can change the cutoff. If we want it to modulate something other than the cutoff, we could make that modulate the resonance or drive or whatever we want, but we're going to stay with cutoff. Let's see how that sounds. There, as you can hear, LFO4 is now modulating that filter. Let's do another one. Over here, we could say we want to modulate from LFO3, and for that, we want it to modulate the modulation. So if we go into mod matrix, so LFO3 is going to modulate the destination of the mod matrix, and what we're going to modulate is the depth of slot number 2. So let's go in here and change this to depth 2, and we'll crank that up a bit. Exit from there. I want to change LFO3 to just a slight faster, let's say 1.92, that's good. So now LFO3 is going to modulate the mod matrix depth number 2. So what's going to happen is the amount of the filter 1 cutoff modulation is going to change based on the change of LFO3. And in fact, let's go back to LFO3 and actually slow it down so it'll get a better idea of what's going on. So now if I press, now you can hear, because there's 2 different LFOs at different speeds going, I have an interesting sound happening that's not just rhythmic. Because 2 different LFOs at different speeds are actually modulating the same thing, the filter 1 cutoff, but just in different ways. Let's have a look at another page here, just so you can see the depth of what can actually be used as sources. Now this also has CV gate inputs and outputs, and those also can be used as modulation sources or destinations. So if we wanted to, we have all of these LFOs, we have poly aftertouch, key tracking, velocity, pitch wheel, mod wheel, ribbon. We can use the ribbon controller to modulate things. So pedals, here's our modular, mod in 1, 2. So we have 2 analog inputs. You can connect this to a modular analog system and use that system to modulate your Hydrasynth. Similarly, if we wanted to, we could say I want to use the ribbon, and the destination of that is going to be mod matrix. I could actually have a macro. You can set up macro knobs. You can actually modulate the macro knobs from here. I could modulate the CV because there's CV output on this. There's multiple CV outputs. There's a mod 2, mod 1, mod 2. So we also could use the mod matrix inside the Hydrasynth to modulate our modular system, our analog modular system, because it has those inputs and outputs. So, but for now, let's say the ribbon is going to modify, I don't know, mutant. Let's set up a mutant. And so if we exit, let's set up mutant number 1 here, and it's a FM linear with a depth, full wet. Let's do wave stack. There we go. So now our first mutant is set up as a wave stack. So if we go in back into the mod matrix, we can say we've got mutant 1, and what we're going to change is the dry wet. There we go. And we'll crank that up. So now, if we exit here, you can hear our wave stack, but we can also change that with the ribbon. The ribbon is by default also connecting to pitch. I didn't disconnect that, so it's actually modulating pitch as well as the dry wet on the mutant. As you can hear down here, there's no wave stack, but up here, lots of wave stack. Cool. Of course, those are definitely not the only way that mod matrices are implemented. If you have a look at the Matrix Brute, the entire synthesizer is actually designed around the mod matrix, and it has a great big 64, I think it's 8 by 8. It has a great big matrix of buttons that you can have sources and destinations, and you can modify the routing of the mod matrix right in front of you, instead of having to work through these other synthesizers where you have to page through the different matrix settings. You have them all right there in front of you, and you can modify them just by pressing the buttons and adjusting the depths and controls and what they're actually mapped to. I hope that explains some of the features of mod matrices, how they're implemented on different synthesizers, what they're good for. And that gives you the ability to, instead of just creating pads and leads and the same old sounds, you can create dynamic and changing and evolving sounds that are far more interesting to listen to, and it really just goes as far as your mind can go. If you are really interested in doing sound design, and you are going to definitely need to learn about mod matrices and get some practice in, I really recommend the Hydrasynth, because the Hydrasynth, the mod matrix, as you can see, it's easy to use. It's so incredibly powerful. It's really almost limitless. There are very few functions on the Hydrasynth that cannot be accessed from the mod matrix, either as a destination or a source, or both. I hope this video was of some interest and use to you. If you do have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. I really do appreciate all you guys leaving comments. I read them all, and I can't tell you how much I love interacting with you guys. It's really the height of my day. I every morning go in and see what everyone has written. If you do like what you saw, hey, maybe think about clicking like and subscribe, because it really helps out the channel and you get notified every time I post one of these videos. That's it. Thanks for watching.